Story 1. Disturbing Encounter in a Dark Alleyway. As I hurried through the dimly lit alleyway, the sound of my footsteps echoed ominously against the brick walls. The streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance around me, heightening my sense of unease. I clutched my phone tightly in my hand, the only source of light in the oppressive darkness. I had made the mistake of hailing a private transport driver online, drawn in by the promise of a quick and convenient ride home. But as I stepped into the car, a wave of unease washed over me. The driver's eyes lingered on me for a moment too long, his smile unervingly wide. Ignoring my instincts, I settled into the back seat, trying to push down the rising sense of dread. The driver took a series of unexpected turns, steering us deeper into the labyrinth of narrow alleys that crisscrossed the city. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized we were veering further away from the main roads, the familiar landmarks fading into the distance. Panic clawed at my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm, my mind racing for a way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, the car lurched to a stop, the engine falling silent. I peered out of the window, my breath catching in my throat. We were surrounded by darkness, the only sound the distant wail of a siren. The driver turned to me, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Where are we?" I demanded, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound composed. He chuckled, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Just a little detour, my dear. Don't worry, we'll be on our way soon." I fumbled for the door handle, my fingers slipping against the smooth surface. But before I could make a move, he reached out and grabbed my arm with a strength that belied his thin frame. His touch was like ice against my skin, sending a jolt of fear through me. "Let me go!" I screamed, my voice echoing through the empty alleyway. But he only laughed, his grip tightening as he leaned in closer, his breath hot against my ear. "You're not going anywhere, my dear. You belong to me now." Terror surged through me, a primal instinct urging me to fight, to escape at any cost. With a surge of adrenaline, I wrenched myself free from his grasp and flung open the door, stumbling out into the darkness. I ran, my heart pounding in my ears, the sound of his mocking laughter echoing behind me. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of a well-lit street, my chest heaving as I gasped for breath. The encounter had shaken me to my core, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows, waiting to ensnare the unwary. As I glanced back at the alleyway, a chill ran down my spine. The driver was nowhere to be seen, swallowed by the darkness like a malevolent spirit. And in that moment, I knew that I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. Anonymous Spectator Story. Story 2. Malevolent Ride Sinister Encounter in an Abandoned Warehouse. It was a cold and foggy night when I hailed a private transport driver to take me to a distant part of the city. The driver, a middle-aged man with a sinister grin, welcomed me into his old, beaten-up car. As we drove through the desolate streets, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that crept up my spine. The driver's eyes flickered with an unsettling gleam in the dimly lit interior of the car. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white against the darkness outside. I tried to make small talk, but his responses were curt and filled with an underlying menace. As we approached our destination, the driver took a sudden turn down a narrow alleyway, away from the main road. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized we were heading towards an abandoned warehouse, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. I demanded to know why we were going there, but the driver remained silent, his gaze fixed straight ahead. Panic set in as I fumbled for the door handle, only to find it locked. The car came to a stop in front of the warehouse, and the driver turned to me with a chilling smile. "You're not getting out," he whispered, his voice dripping with malice. I frantically searched for a way to escape, but the windows were sealed shut, and the doors refused to budge. The driver's laughter echoed through the empty warehouse as he dragged me out of the car and into the darkness. Inside, the warehouse loomed like a labyrinth of shadows and forgotten nightmares. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and distant sounds of dripping water filled the silence. I stumbled through the debris-strewn corridors, my heart racing with fear. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, its features obscured by tattered rags and a twisted mask. It moved towards me with slow, deliberate steps, its intentions unknown and its presence suffocating. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The figure reached out a hand, its touch icy cold against my skin. In that moment, I knew I was not alone in the warehouse, and whatever malevolent force lurked within its walls was far from human. As the figure drew closer, I closed my eyes and braced for the worst. But instead of feeling its grasp, I heard a commotion behind me. Lights flooded the warehouse as police officers stormed in, guns drawn and expressions grim. The driver and the mysterious figure were apprehended, their true intentions revealed to be part of a sinister human trafficking ring preying on unsuspecting passengers. I was shaken but grateful to have escaped the clutches of evil that night. Anonymous Spectator Story. Final satisfatório. Story 3. The Unexpected Detour. It was a rainy evening when I found myself stranded in an unfamiliar city, desperately searching for a way back to my hotel. The streets were empty, and the dimly lit alleys only added to my growing sense of unease. As I walked, a car pulled up beside me, and the driver rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" he asked, his voice smooth but lacking warmth. Relief flooded through me, and I quickly got into the car without a second thought. The driver introduced himself as Lucas, a private transport driver who knew the city like the back of his hand. I relaxed into the seat, grateful to be out of the rain. As we drove, Lucas began to take a series of unexpected turns, leading us deeper into the heart of the city. I glanced out the window, trying to get my bearings, but the streets all looked the same in the darkness. A sense of dread crept over me as I realized we were heading away from the main roads into the deserted outskirts. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Lucas chuckled, a cold sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Just a shortcut," he replied cryptically. I tried to mask my growing fear, telling myself that I was overreacting. But as the minutes passed and the surroundings grew increasingly desolate, I knew something was terribly wrong. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized I was at the mercy of a stranger in the dead of night. Suddenly, the car came to a stop in front of an abandoned hospital, its windows shattered and facade crumbling. My heart pounded in my ears as Lucas turned to me, his eyes glinting in the darkness. "Time to pay for your ride," he said with a sinister smile. I scrambled for the door, but it was locked tight. My mind raced with fear as I realized the true horror of my situation. Lucas was no ordinary driver. He was a predator, luring unsuspecting victims into his trap. As he advanced towards me, a surge of adrenaline coursed through my veins. With a strength born of desperation, I kicked open the door and bolted into the night, the sound of Lucas's enraged shouts echoing behind me. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, finally collapsing in a heap on the pavement. But I had escaped, and in that moment of victory, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. Lucas may have thought he had me at his mercy, but I had outwitted him, emerging from the darkness stronger than before. As I made my way back to safety, the memory of that harrowing encounter stayed with me, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. But I was no longer a helpless victim. I was a survivor, ready to face whatever challenges the world threw my way. Anonymous Spectator Story.